I'm Matthew Phelps, co-author of the Turning to God's Word Bible study, The Letter to the Hebrews, an explanation of the mechanism of our salvation. Today we'll be talking about Lesson 21 of our study, which covers the second book of Samuel, chapter 6, verses 1 through 19, and the first book of Chronicles, chapter 24, verses 1 to 3. This is the third part of our series, exploring the foundations of the priesthood in the Old Testament and the development. This week, we will be talking about how the priesthood we've seen laid out in the previous lessons changes with the addition of a king in Israel, specifically King David. David again gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000, and David arose and went with all the people who were with him from Baal-Judah to bring up from there the Ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, who sits enthroned on the cherubim. And they carried the Ark of God upon a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. And Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, were driving the new cart with the Ark of God, and Ahio went before the ark. And David and all the house of Israel were making merry before the Lord with all their might, with songs and lyres and harps and tambourines and castanets and cymbals. Here in this reading, we're seeing that King David has decided to bring the Ark of the Lord up into the city of Jerusalem, the city of the king. The king is going to bring possession of the Ark into the holy city. And who do you see there with the Ark as this is happening, and who don't you see is something of an interesting thing. David is going before the Lord, before the Ark of the Lord, dancing and rejoicing. And a couple of people who have had it in their family for a bit. The people we don't see there in this religious procession, at least not mentioned by name yet, are the priests, which seems a little bit odd. You'd think that you might have some priests present for an event like this. What's going on? Let's find out. And when they came to the threshing floor of Hakon, Uzzah put his hand on the Ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God struck him there because he put forth his hand to the ark. And he died there because of the Ark of God. And David was angry because the Lord had broken forth upon Uzzah, and that place is called Perazuzah to this day. And David was afraid of the Lord that day, and he said, "How can the Ark of the Lord come to me?" So David was not willing to take the Ark of the Lord into the city of David, but David took it aside to the house of Obed-edom, the Gittite. And the Ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-edom, the Gittite, 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-edom and all his household. So along the procession, there's a little accident. The ox pulling the cart stumbles. It jostles a little bit. Of course, sacred and important thing, you don't want it to fall out or to fall off. Uzzah, being conscious of that, probably reacted without even thinking too much to stabilize the ark, and bam, he died. To which David said, "Whoa, wait a minute, I don't want that. If that little tiny mistake is all it's going to take for me to die, pass. We can leave it where it is." And so the sort of settled it at the next place that they could find anybody to take it and went on their way. But then they did keep tabs on it, and they noticed that it brought incredible great fortune to that household for the time it was there. Of course, David being the king, can't leave it there then. Yeah, we were bringing it to Jerusalem. This was just a detour. So let's see what happens. And it was told King David, "The Lord has blessed the household of Obed-edom and all that belongs to him because of the Ark of God." So David went and brought up the Ark of God from the house of Obed-edom to the city of David with rejoicing. And when those who bore the Ark of the Lord had gone 6 paces, he sacrificed an ox and a fatling. And David was belted with a linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the Ark of the Lord with shouting and with the sound of the horn. So they bring the Ark into the city, and as they're heading up, a few odd things happen. David does something that's unusual. 2 things. First, what is he wearing? The linen ephod is the garb of a priest. And second, what does he do before the ark enters the city? He offers sacrifice, which is the job of the priest. And by standing directly before the ark, the thing that belonged in the tabernacle in the center of the tent, he is essentially offering service before the ark in basically the equivalent of the Holy of Holies as well. David is acting as a priest would act, and a priest in the sense of a son of Aaron. And nobody seems to mind. David is a priest, is a king, clearly the king, not the first so much as the first one that passed muster and was allowed to remain king until he died, God's anointed. But he is not a Levite or a son of Aaron, and yet it seems that he is enabled and empowered by virtue of his kingship to act also as a priest. It seems that God's plan for the kingship was for the kings not to be separate from and at odds with the priests, but to be in addition to and perhaps serve above the priests. David is not distinct from the priesthood in the way he acts and functions, and he's the king that God intended and appointed. So what does that tell us about God's vision of the relationship between the king of his people and his priesthood? As the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked out of the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. And they brought in the ark of the Lord and set it in its place, inside the tent which David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And when David had finished offering the burnt offerings and the peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts, and distributed among all the people, the whole multitude of Israel, both women, men and women, to each a cake of bread, a portion of meat, and a cake of raisins. And all the people departed, each to his house. David keeps it up with the priestly activity. When the ark is settled, he again offers sacrifices before it, and then blesses the people. It seems that, again, where are the priests in all of this? It seems that they may have become negligent in their duties. There is definitely an absence, and David is filling the void and acting, again, as a priest would. It's a fascinating thing to see, especially in light of understanding Jesus in the role of priest, prophet, and king, to see that David, the first king, acted not just as king, but also as priest. Let's see what Chronicles has to say as well. The division of the sons of Aaron were these. The sons of Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. But Hadab and Abihu died before their father and had no children. So Eleazar and Ithamar became the priests. With the help of Zadok of the sons of Eleazar and Ahimelech of the sons of Ithamar, David organized them according to the appointed duties in their service. Small passage, lots of names. Why is it important? There is still a priesthood at the time of David, but more than that, who is deciding who is going to serve as priests and who's not? It's not the priests, it's the king. David is, in fact, not only able to offer sacrifices without anyone complaining, but he is also functionally assuming administrative responsibilities for the priesthood. They can't order and sort and send people into different duties without the approval of the king. As the king of the United Kingdom, David is also functionally over the priesthood. There is no distinction as we have separation of church and state theoretically in our country today. And so religion is governed as an institution entirely separate from political administration of the country. Not so here. They're joined, political and military and religious administration are all joined in the person of David the king. So the king is a very different thing at that time than it is now. And also the ruling of the priesthood is a very different thing than it has been. And there's never some great proclamation by God, David, you're king, you're in charge of the priesthood. It's just the way it develops and happens, which is an important development of the priesthood when we lead to Jesus Christ for a few reasons. First, David can do that, and he is not of the tribe of Levi. He is the tribe of Judah, as is Jesus. Second, he is not only somehow allowed by virtue of his kingship to perform some priestly functions, but to be the ruler, so to speak, of the priesthood as well as of the people. And likewise, Jesus inherits that ability as the king in the line of David. So when we look at Jesus, who is also not a Levite, and say, how can Jesus assume roles of offering sacrifices and roles that we think should be exclusive to the Aaronic priesthood without being a son of Aaron? How can that work? We have David as a model because David was able to do it first. And Jesus is king in the line of David. So, of course, Jesus also inherits that right. This has been a summary of Lesson 21 of the Turning to God's Word Bible Study, the letter to the Hebrews, an explanation of the mechanism of our salvation. For more information, consult our written study or visit our online forums at turningtogodsword.com.